Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome back to another session. I'm really excited that you guys were loving the last episode on just recognizing that sense of distress and overwhelm you're feeling and the support that you felt that you received from the tips and the guidance to help you move forward. And this one is going to be kind of like an adjacent episode to it. And so we're going to be talking today about this sense of feeling inferior. So feeling distressed and feeling overwhelmed is typically something that you face and you sense when you have a lot of external pressures in your life. So that could be parenting, that could be the world. We just had the election, and so a lot of people are feeling a sense of just change and transition coming from that. But when we're feeling inferior, it's very much a personal bias. It's a personal opinion. It's a very subjective experience that we have about ourselves personally. And the sense of feeling inferior comes in many different forms and ways. So I'm going to touch on a few different ways of inferiority and speak specifically to that. But if you have something that I may not mention or list today where you are feeling inferior of or to, please feel free to reach out. You can always reach me at team ryleejuneteam@gmail.com. There we go. And I would love to support you, connect with you in any way that I can, and offer any advice. And of course, on all social media platforms, @_She is Restored on Instagram and @She is Restored podcast on Instagram as well. So I am there for you to support you in any way that I can. So let's talk about this sense of feeling inferior. So before we get into this, it's really important to recognize that when you're feeling inferior to something, it's typically related to two different things. Now, we're going to go much more in depth with these as we go through this episode, but it's either because of a sense of guilt or shame that you're facing because of something that you aren't doing or feel like you should be doing better, or it is primarily a spiritual attack. And the beautiful thing about us growing in our relationship with Christ is that we have this opportunity to really lead with humility and grace. And I feel like in any sense that you may be feeling inferior, there is not only a solution, but there is even more importantly a way forward from being weighed down, bogged down, and held down by that feeling, that sensation, that idea about yourself. So I have actually prepared an episode. Now I just have to make sure we get it. Okay, here it is. Perfect. Okay, so getting into this, feeling inferior can come in many different senses. You can feel like you're inferior to another mom. If you have moms in your life whose kids are seemingly really well behaved, their houses are always clean, their life always seems very put together, you can feel inferior to that. You can feel inferior to your spouse. If your spouse is doing really well, they're improving, they're hitting goals, they're striving for things, and you're feeling like you're falling behind or not doing enough, or maybe that there are comments that are being made from other people or your spouse, someone in your life, that are also making you feel that way. Someone is putting you down or constantly critically evaluating what you're doing and how you're doing it. And you're feeling like there's not a lot of support. There's not a lot of, hey, this is how I can recognize this is happening in your life and let me help you, right? Or I can recognize this is happening in your life and is there anything I can do to support you, right? If you're not getting a lot of that positive support or the offering of support, you can be left with feeling like, okay, great. So here's another person who doesn't think that I'm doing very well. Here's another person who thinks that I suck, that I am incapable, that this is a mess, that I've made a mess of this, that, I haven't been doing the best that I can. Or there's a sense of feeling inferior to how you used to be. Oh, I used to have this all together. I used to look like this. I used to be like this. I used to dress like this. I used to act like this. But now you're feeling like, well, now I don't have that, and I'm not like that, and I don't act like that. I'm busy, buddy. And so when you're in that space, that mental space, It is, again, coming back to our two primary categories. There's something you're doing that you're feeling guilty or ashamed of, or you're under a spiritual warfare. And please understand that both can be happening at the same time. The enemy can only leverage what you are feeling, sensing, saying, and doing. And so we can distinctly recognize that when we are overcoming shame and guilt and we're on a path of improvement in any sense, that the enemy can still leverage, yeah, but you didn't do it as good as before. You're not doing it fast enough. Okay, here's another day where you've fallen off track. Well, only 4 out of 7 days this week you've done this. And so that's not good enough. So the enemy can leverage your improvement as well. And that's where it can distinctly be more of only a spiritual attack when you are doing the things that you can think of and that you are getting the support and help with. When you are improving, the enemy can leverage over you a spiritual attack. That's when we get to really step up and recognize the effort you are putting in and the steps you are taking and the improvements you have successfully worked towards, and recognize that you are standing in that place of victory. You are standing in that place of perseverance. You are standing in that place of doing the darndest that you can. And so it's important to rebuke that attack. So, feeling inferior is something that society trains us to feel. It's actually not a personal, individual experience, subjective experience, that you feel inferior in some sense of or another in your life. Society is designed to condition you, from the education system to propaganda media to advertisements for women specifically, and honestly even for men. Nowadays, there is advertisements all over the place that are designed to make you feel inferior. The Kardashians' whole brand is based off of you not feeling enough so that you go and emulate them and buy their stuff. So it's not that this is a one-off situation for you where you feel this way. It is strategically designed for you to feel that way. However, when building your relationship in Christ, we also get to come to recognize that none of those things matter, that all of those things are very worldly, that the enemy doesn't have a stronghold over us in our faith in Christ and our actions and our inclined hearts to Christ, and that we get to grow from that space, that we get to halt the enemy in his attack, rebuke it, and recognize that I'm actually doing the best that I can. I'm doing an incredible job. I've done better than I have before. I'm in a totally different season of my life than I ever was. So comparing old me to now me or vice versa isn't helping or solving anything. It's actually hindering and distracting me from seeing the goodness and the transformation and the changes and the blessings that God is providing for me. And so from that space, we can also live with a little bit of humility. So I'll give you a personal example. So when I found out that I was pregnant 11 weeks ago, just over 11 weeks ago now, I really stepped back from reading the Bible. I spent a lot more time sleeping, and stepping back from the Bible and spending more time sleeping, yes, I can go through all the things while I'm growing a human and first trimester and all these things. And other than being exhausted, I haven't really had any other symptoms or things that have hindered me in any way. And so I'm very, very grateful for that, considering my last 3 pregnancies were very much about being sick for the first trimester. With that being said, I allowed that to be the excuses of why I couldn't even put the Bible app on and have it read to me, why I couldn't read the Bible before bed, why I couldn't spend any time, hardly any time, in even things like prayer. And so I created all these excuses as to why this was no longer a priority for me. And what I came to find and what started to happen is I became a lot more impatient, quick to temper. I started swearing more than I normally do. I found myself very short-mannered with my children. I also found myself pushing my husband away, not really wanting connection.
Mommy, can I go to the park with
Philip, get out when I'm done. And so in all of that, it was really hard for me to find the heart in all of it to come back to the Bible. And it wasn't until I led with the humility, I started to feel inferior. Like, oh, I'm not a good mom. I'm not doing a good job. I'm sleeping all the time. Now I'm not being a good Christian. I've really abstained from reading the book and, even just doing the basic things like prayer. Okay, I have hope in Jesus, but what, is that even good enough if I'm not acting that way, if I'm not showing up that way, if I'm not being that way, if I'm not being the transformation that he has given me in my heart? Am I really doing well? And so I found that sense of inferiority starting to really come up in so many different areas of my life. And as I started to recognize this, I had to recognize that not only was I under a spiritual attack, but that I really needed to lead with a lot of humility. I'm actually not doing a very good job when it comes to my relationship with Christ. I actually am not doing very well as a mom right now. I can be tired and still not swear at my kids. I can be tired and still not be quick to temper. Okay, what else am I doing that's contributing to that? Well, I'm not fueling myself very well. I'm definitely not drinking enough water. I'm picking quick snacks, high sugar things to consume, and that's not helping me at all. I completely halted my exercises. If you've been following me on social media, you know that I was super consistent from the beginning of January till about the end of August of doing my 23-minute workouts almost every single day. Completely stopped that. Haven't worked out since I found out I was pregnant in October, end of September. Anyways, and so I had to really look with humility, like, okay, these feelings of inferiority don't need to be exacerbated. And I can also recognize how I'm contributing to that. And so when you're feeling that, leading with a sense of humility and honesty is also a recognition of your change of heart, of the transformation that you go through in Christ, of your willingness to do better and be better. And I haven't changed everything as I've started to come into that sense of humility and recognize where I'm at, but I definitely started doing a lot more things. Came back to my schedules around cleaning, came back to reading the Bible every day, or at the very least listening to it before I went to bed, praying every day again over myself and my family and for others. I've been super lax on my exercise, but I've come back to better quality eating habits again like I used to. And so it's recognizing, okay, there are things that I'm personally doing that is contributing to this. And it's taken me about 8 weeks to really get over that slump and come back to my healthy habits again and just growing and building in my beautiful relationship that I really do truly honor and cherish so much with Christ. But it really took that humility. And it really took rebuking the enemy's attacks. And that can come in either or way that you want it to. Like you can combat that in either form. But recognizing that your sense of inferiority still stems from a sense of guilt and shame. And if you are solely working on better improvements in your life in any capacity, especially over the things you feel inferior to, like parenting, if you've been more patient, you've been more kind, you've been reaching out for more research sources, you have been doing the things that you can possibly fathom to be necessary and needed for you to improve in that area of your life, then understand that it is just truly a spiritual attack and it's time to start rebuking that. I rebuke all demonic and spiritual attacks in the name of Jesus Christ. I bind all negative and demonic entities in the blood of Christ. I only allow and welcome that comes from God, from Jesus, from the Holy Spirit. And this house is fully, entirely protected, including each and every person in it. And so just something as simple as that to help bring yourself back to a sense of relief. Okay, it's actually okay. It's going to be okay. I'm okay. I'm safe. As I'm going through my studies, I'm doing biological psych study, and so it's primarily working with the nervous system and nerves and chemical connections in our bodies and how it contributes to behavior. And so having a sense of inferiority and feeling panic and overwhelm and distress all stems from having an irregulated system. If your system is constantly irregulated, you're depleted in nutrition, you're depleted in sleep, you're depleted in water. Water is a huge component to a lot of those things. You're going to have a really hard time stabilizing yourself. And so it's why when we go through 90 days of restoration, we first work on our house, because it's something that we all feel we need to do first, is that external thing. And instead of trying to reprogram and reset everything, let's just literally navigate it and conquer things as they are in our lives. And so we work on our house, but then the second month is very much about a priority over our health. Because if we do not focus on our health, we don't have the energy for everything else. And then the next month, the next 30 days of the 90 is our mindfulness around just growing in our relationship with Christ. And sometimes that just means when you get to that section of the program, you're literally just working on doing better at praying. We're getting into the word, right? It's not this like heavy-seated, challenging experience. It's really just coming back to, what is the basics of what I'm doing when it comes to personal care, care over my home, and care over my spiritual self, which in all of it is correlated. And we need all those three aspects of our life to be functioning well. And when they're not, we feel that sense of inferiority, more so even because our body is dysregulated. And our body isn't dysregulated because of our emotions. Our bodies are dysregulated because we have a chemical imbalance. And so we can't actually fix our emotional irregulation until we fix our chemical balancing. Doc Shock is someone that I often have talked about on the podcast as being an incredible resource if you're looking for personalized and tailored to you testing. You can reach out to him. I'll have a link in the show notes. And just have a chat. You can do a 15-minute free call where you can check in with one of his team supports, and they can help you to determine what you need. If you're in Canada, in Edmonton and surrounding areas, you can reach out to the Heart Clinic. Karen is an incredible support. She has been a phenomenal support system for my family. She's really helped my husband through a lot of his restoration and healing. And now I'm going to be a client of hers as well. So those are definitely options for you if you're looking for things like that. With that being said, it is so vital for us to recognize that when we are feeling inferior, step one, check into humility. What is it that you are in fact doing? And not from a place of, okay, well, I know it's this, I don't want to beat myself up more, but just genuinely do that evaluation and assessment. What have I really fallen off track with? Basics, house, self, and faith. What have you really stepped back from? Because it's not about trying to shove all of those back into your life immediately. It is a slow build. Some people are of the extreme where you need to do everything all at once, be all in. And some are at the belief that you need to just take things one at a time. And I really do believe that if you want to have good, healthy, not structures, if you want to have good, healthy habits in your life, you really do need to integrate them one at a time, because otherwise you're not doing yourself any better by just trying to pile on more things in your life. Work on one habit at a time. That's why we work on one healthy habit at a time over 30 days. And then after the 90 days is up, we go right back to the beginning and we just re-implement or build into what we already have established as a good, healthy habit. So with that being said, there is a way forward. Your sense of inferiority really just boils down to being radically honest with yourself and rebuking all spiritual warfare over your life. I found that as I started to experience inferiority, especially over the last 10, 11 weeks, that what helped me the most was really just sitting in humility. Okay, I'm actually not doing good here. I'm actually not doing well here. I've really fallen off over here. And sitting in that from a place of not tying myself into a woe is me type of emotion and mentality, it allowed me to really sit and then assess, okay, well, what do I have the energy for right now to start with? What can I focus on first? One thing at a time, one healthy habit at a time makes up a world of a difference. What can I really start on first? And for me, it was actually eating better because I was sleeping quite a lot, which is not only a sign of pregnancy, but it's also a sign of being very mineral and vitamin deficient. And so I needed to work on that. So I could have the focus to get into the book. At the very least, I just started putting on the Bible and letting it read to me as I would go to bed. And that's not for myself, it's not the best method, but I wanted to come back to being consistent and diligent. So with all of that to be said, one of the things that really helped me to sit in the humility of where I was objectively was Mark 8:34. Deny yourself and take up your cross. And this is probably one of my favorite passages in the entire book because it is such a powerful and important call to action that Jesus really calls us to. And it is what allows us to have the transformation of our heart in any circumstance that we're facing. I'll read you the actual verse. So it's 34-36, and it says, "When he had called the people to himself, with his disciples also, he said to them, 'Whoever desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul?' 37 says, 'Or what will a man gain in exchange or give in exchange for his soul?' 38, 'For whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes to the glory of his Father with the holy angels.'" And so if you don't really understand what that means, it's denying your self-pleasures, denying your woes as me's, denying your inferiority, denying this idea that the things that you think are good enough actually aren't good enough, and that's okay, that there truly is then room for improvement. If we think that our good enough is okay, then there's no room for improvement. But recognizing, you know what, I'm actually not being a very good mom right now. I'm actually pushing my husband away right now. I'm not being a great wife. I really have super slacked on the house. And there's going to be seasons for these things, and that's going to happen. But not settling in that it's okay. Recognizing that there's grace and there's this complacency of okay is two completely different things. It's okay means that you're settled in that. Seeing where you are and just having pure grace over that. I see where I'm at. And I can improve and I can get better. I see where I'm at. Just see where you're at. You're not tying emotions to it. You're not tying finality to that. You're just allowing it to be what it is. Not being a great mom right now, not my favorite. Not being a great wife right now, not my favorite. Not being a great steward over my home right now, not my favorite. Ordering insane amounts of takeout. I've never done that in my life. Super not my favorite. Not a great steward of finances. Not a great steward for health. No wonder I'm super tired, right? It's like, okay, that's not okay, but I'm going to have grace for myself over this season. And now I'm going to start genuinely looking at what I can do better, what I can improve on. And that's where we're going to start. So I'm not allowing myself to settle into this idea of that's okay. It's just like, here's where I'm at. I'm going to let God meet me here. And I'm going to lean on him maybe more than I ever thought I needed to help me come up. And so when I deny myself, it means that I'm not going to settle in this anymore. I'm not going to choose my own self-indulgent behaviors right now. I'm going to deny myself and pick up my cross. Okay, these are the things that I am doing. Here's that humility. Here's that honesty. I'm going to choose to follow Jesus. So what would Jesus do? Well, Jesus would probably do this. Okay, well, that's really exhausting for me right now. Okay, well, I'm out of bed doing what else anyways? Am I scrolling on my phone? Am I wandering around my house? Am I sitting at a table? Am I eating more food? Am I gossiping about someone? Like, you're doing something anyways. And it takes just as much effort, unless you're going to work out. That takes more effort than to just do, or as it is to do whatever else you're doing. So it's like, okay, what's that next step for me? What's my one healthy habit I'm going to work on then? Okay, well, I'm going to stop ordering takeout and I'm going to start meal planning and prepping again and come back to that. And man, just 1 week of that made such a difference on our bank account and on our behaviors and moods. And I didn't need as much sleep. It was incredible. It was incredible just to see how one small shift in discipline, in one shift inclined towards Christ, made such a world of a difference. So when we lead with humility, what we're allowing ourselves to do is to recognize that when we do that, the enemy can't hold you hostage anymore. He can't hold you hostage when you're like, hey, you know what? Here I am. I'm here maybe because of all these reasons, but you know what? Here I am. He doesn't have the opportunity to stronghold you anymore because you're just living in that place of honesty. When we look at humility in the Bible, I am called to Proverbs chapter 11, verse 2. And it says, when pride comes, then comes shame. But with the humble is wisdom. So when we sit in, well, I'm doing good enough. This is enough. They're not helping me. I've done so much already. How is this not enough? That's leading from a prideful heart. But when we lead from a sense of, you know what? Here I am. Here's what I am doing. Here's what I am, in fact, not doing. And, okay, what can I work on then one step at a time to incline my heart back to Christ or to improve or to step up in a better way? You don't have room for pride. You don't have room for shame. There's a few here that I have outlined. If we go to, I'll share one more with you. Proverbs 22, verse 4. By humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. So even not, 11 chapters ahead, we see God talking about how humility and a focus by fearing the Lord provides you with riches and honor and life again. You're not sitting in the slums of whatever it is that you're facing. And though you may have a good reason, if you have someone who's passed away or something that's really hard in your life to deal with right now, a child thing, a parenting thing, a spousal thing, right? It's not about dismissing the fact that those things exist or that they are challenging and they are hard. But it is about recognizing that just because they are happening, you're still alive. You still have a breath in your lungs. You still have eyes in your head and a brain that is functioning. And so there are things, even one healthy habit shift at a time, that you can work on to eliminate shame, to stay in humility, to incline your heart to Christ. That those things don't have to go away just because life is really hard. And we can say, well, there's certain things that are of more of a circumstance than others, and you're right. And that doesn't mean that humility, grace, and working on one thing at a time to improve yourself is still the most helpful and important way to even go through what it is that you're going through and overcome it. So let's talk a little bit about, here for a couple minutes, before we close out the episode, about what an inferiority complex is. So just so you know, this isn't a new thing. The sense of feeling inferior was actually discovered by a psychologist, a psychoanalyst by the name of Alfred Adler in 1907. He introduced the inferiority complex as a psychodeficiency, a mental health issue. So for well over 100 years, it has been recognized that people battle with this. From inferiority complexes, if you are unwilling to work on and to combat your inferiority complexes, it can develop into things such as paranoid personality disorder, completely lacking trust, always being suspicious of others, beliefs that others are trying to do harm to you with no reason to feel that way, doubts of loyalty, more unwillingness to trust others, hesitation to confide in others. So when we don't sit in our humility and we instead lead from our inferiority, if you have been feeling these types of ways, it's because there has been a lack of attempts towards combating that inferiority, which again comes back to humility, pure honesty, and recognizing objectively where you are, praying, rebuking the spiritual warfare over yourself, and 3, one healthy habit shift at a time. If someone tells you, oh, you're really shitty at cleaning your house, and you have been working on it every day, even if it's just like laundry. Laundry was the biggest thing for me. It used to be everywhere. I couldn't stand it. The kids would have to pull things out of the dryer because I had no mind to fold it and deal with it. And that always really bothered me. And so instead of focusing on everything else in my house, I just focused on the laundry. So then when I started to feel like I'm not doing good enough when it comes to cleaning my house, my focus on my laundry helped me to see, actually, I am improving. It used to be a huge problem for me, and now it's not a problem at all, right? Taking innocent remarks or situations that are not threatening as personal insults or attacks. This is parts of paranoid personality disorder. Becoming angry or hostile to what is believed to be slights or insults. So if someone is saying something to you, there's a big difference between someone like genuinely insulting you and someone like poking. If you guys have been going back and forth, poking fun at each other, and somebody says something, now you're taking it super personally. It's like recognizing the nature of the conversation, right? Holding grudges, and often suspecting a spouse of being unfaithful. Okay, it can also develop into schizoid personality disorders. So appears to be cold to or not interested in others. So this is being very emotionally repressed, very much pulling yourself away from emotions, cannot take pleasure in most activities, cannot pick up typical social cues, having little to no interest in having sex with your spouse, is limited in how your emotions are expressed, almost always chooses to be alone. So you've really stepped back into this place of isolation that can all derive from a very deep subconscious inferiority complex. I'll leave you with 2 other ones. So the ones that I listed are based off of dysfunctional patterns of thinking and behavior that reflect suspicious or lack of interest in others. So when we have an inferiority complex and it's developed into a sense where we have dysfunctional patterns of thinking and behavior, those are the types of personality disorders that can come from that place. If you are someone who leads more from an emotional complex and you sit in deep-seated inferiority, it can develop into dysfunctional patterns of dramatic or overly emotional thinking and unpredictable behavior. So there's another subset of a personality disorder that is more tailored to the emotional side of things versus the physical action-orientated kind of things. And these ones are borderline personality disorders, has strong fears of being alone or abandoned, has ongoing feelings of emptiness, sees self as being unstable or weak, has deep relationships that are not stable, has up and down moods, often due to stress when interacting with others, threatens, self-harms, or behaves in ways that could lead to suicide, is often very angry, shows impulsive and risky behavior, such as gambling or binging, has stress-related paranoia that comes and goes. The other one is histrionic personality disorder, always seeking attention. So this is kind of the opposing side of it. So emotionally, you're a lot more unstable and isolated. And then on the other side, it's very overt. It's always seeks attention, overly emotional and dramatic, stirs things up to get attention, speaks dramatically with strong opinions and has few facts or details to back them up, is easily led by others, has shallow emotions that change quickly, is very concerned with physical appearance, thinks relationships with others are closer than they are. And so on the extreme side of that is also the narcissist and then the super antisocial personality disorders. So when we go through this, there is one more subgroup that I'm going to mention here as well. So we also have the dysfunctional patterns of anxiety behavior. So we have our action-orientated or physical. We have our overly emotional, and then we have our hyper anxious. These all stem from an inferiority complex. So dependent upon your childhood experiences, how you process and cope and manage with your experiences and emotions, what you subject yourself to in terms of relationships, in terms of quality of nutrition, and in terms of your relationship with Christ, like how seriously you really do take that, how humbled you are in yourself, your self-reflections, is kind of going to depend on how your inferiority complex is going to manifest in terms of these personality disorders. Now recognize, I want to caveat, these are not diagnoses. If you do find yourself resonating with some of these, really just come back to that sense of humility, because humility, being honest with where you're at objectively, rebuking all spiritual attacks, and working on one healthy habit at a time is truly going to combat whichever one of these you may resonate with most, or many. If there's more than one you resonate with, you can still combat it with truly those three things. And I'd say the last thing that I haven't mentioned is forgiveness. I'm almost done. Forgiveness. If you're holding back forgiveness towards someone, that can really, truly, genuinely make such a world of difference. So here's the last one, and this is dysfunctional patterns of anxious thinking and behavior. Avoidant personality disorder is very sensitive to criticism or rejection, does not feel good enough, important, or attractive, does not take part in work activities that include others, is isolated, does not try new activities, extremely shy in social settings, feels disapproval, embarrassment, and fears being made fun of. Then there's the dependent personality disorder. This one definitely, when I was going through this, I was like, oh yeah, that one like really sounds like me. Relies on others too much and feels the need to be taken care of, is submissive or clingy towards others, fears having to take care of self if left alone, lacks confidence in abilities, needs a lot of advice and comforting from others to make even small decisions, finds it hard to start or do projects due to lack of self-confidence, finds it hard to disagree with others, fearing they will not approve, endures poor treatment or abuse even when other opinions are available, has an urgent need to start a new relationship when one closes. And lastly, in this category of dysfunctional anxious behavior is obsessive compulsive personality disorder. So hyper-focused on details and orderliness, thinks everything needs to be perfect, gets upset when perfection is not achieved, cannot finish a project because reaching perfection is not possible, needs to be in control of people, tasks, and situations, cannot assign tasks to others, ignores friends and enjoyable activities because of too much focus on work or projects, cannot throw away broken or worthless objects, is rigid and stubborn, is not flexible about morality, ethics, or values, holds very tight control over budgeting and spending. So very, very, very controlling. Again, all of these stem from an inferiority complex, depending on how you cope and manage and deal with your traumas and your inferiorities and your overwhelm, that is kind of going to determine where you're going to fit in those categories. Again, these are not diagnoses, but these are ways for you to start understanding that this is how you have likely developed some of these habits and patterns that you now have that have seemingly helped you cope with anxiety or inferiority or overwhelm. And here's how inferiority can be caused. Childhood experiences, social disadvantages. So if you've been treated unfavorably by peers or experiencing discrimination, physical challenges, having physical defects, mental limitations, having unfavorable comparisons with others' achievements in setting unrealistically high expectations for oneself. So that can also come from parents. Cultural messages, being bombarded with messages from society about how we should act. Personality traits. Some personality traits make some more susceptible to inferiority complex than others. So when we're looking at this, it's very helpful to really just sit in that humility of where you're at. What are you really truly feeling inferior to? Why are you feeling that way? Look at your circumstances objectively and allow yourself to be humbled in them. Rebuke the spiritual attack over you. grow in your relationship with Christ. Open the Bible, put on the Bible app and let it read to you today. Proverbs is Proverbs is one of my favorite books in the Bible because it's very much just about wisdom and just attaining. King David is the one who, King Solomon. He is the one who wrote Proverbs, and it's his life in sin and need for power that through this book transforms him into a place of seeking wisdom and trusting in God. And it's really, really powerful because it's actually a follow-up from Ecclesiastes, where in Ecclesiastes we see King Solomon, and he's like very much in this place of grief, like nothing is meaningful. He lived his entire life seeking vanity, building the biggest palaces, having the most amount of maids and servants, eating the most incredible foods, having the biggest vineyards, having all the money in the land. And yet he just comes to this point where he has this encounter with God, and he realized none of it is even worth it. All of it is meaningless. It's all vanity. And then we go to Proverbs, and Proverbs is like his change of heart. And you just see him really lean into that place of optimism and grace and positivity and standing in the place of a victory in Jesus. And it's so, so, so beautiful. So if you're feeling lost, if there's any book right now that's speaking to you, definitely go and open that. But I want to leave you with this episode today because if you have been feeling that way and you have been feeling inferior in your life, or you feel overwhelmed and distressed because things are hard and challenging, and though they very well may be, please recognize and know that there is always a way forward, that you are truly never alone, that there is always someone in your life who is willing to offer up a hand to help. And at the very least, which is the best and most greatest thing, God has never left you, and he has always been there, and he loves you so, so, so much. And so he is always a resource for you at the very least and at the absolute most. So I hope this episode was everything you needed and more. I am sending you so much love and blessing, and let me know. Shoot me a message on Instagram or an email if you feel called, if you need any support, and let me know what you thought of this episode. I'd love to hear your feedback and see where we can go from here. All right, sending you all the love. Until next time.